Okay guys, today I got a real treat for you. We're going to be doing Gaussian elimination. Now, we're going to start this by first looking at a two-variable system. So I'm going to zoom in on this a little bit. I've got x minus 5y equals negative 5 and negative 4x minus 2y equals 20. What we're going to do is by a series of multiplying equations by numbers and adding and subtracting equations, we're going to try and change these coefficients to a 1, a 0, a 0, and a 1. So what we'll have is we'll have 1x plus 0y. Well, that would just be x. And we'll have 0x plus 1y. Well, that would just be y. And then whatever these numbers are over here, one on top will be x and the one on the bottom will be y. Now, first thing I got to tell you is that Gauss really liked to simplify things. So he looked at all this and he said, there's a lot of redundancy I don't need here. So he came up with kind of his own system of writing this out. So what Gauss came along and did is he said, I'm going to write it kind of as a matrix. I'm going to put the coefficients down. But he said, why do I keep showing equal signs? Why do I keep showing the variables? I could just do this. Put a bar and then put negative 5 and 20. And what Gauss understood was that these numbers here, those are the coefficients. What these numbers are here, these are the solutions. And there must be two variables, whatever they are. He just saw the rest of it as kind of getting in the way. It's kind of genius when you think about it. Now, what we're going to do is we're going to do these in tandem, or we're going to see how they look together before I get to the 3 by 3. So we've got this system over here, and notice that I've already got a 1 where the x is. So I'm not going to change that. That looks pretty good. But what I want to do is I want to change this second row so that the x there is 0. I want to change that negative 4 to a 0. Well, one way to do that is, what if I took the top row, multiplied it by 4, and then added it to the bottom row? So take this top row, multiply everything by 4, and then add it to the bottom row to create a new bottom row. So here is a little shorthand. We're going to go 4 times row 1. We're going to add it to row 2, and that's going to become my new row 2. Okay? So we've got 4 times 1, which is, well, let me back up. I'm not changing row 1. I'm changing row 2. So I'm going to put row 1 here. 1x minus 5y equals negative 5. Okay, now let's go. So 4 times 1 is 4 plus negative 4 is 0. So now I've got a 0x. Then I go 4 times negative 5 is negative 20, and negative 20 plus a negative 2 is a negative 22. Equals, and I have to do the same thing with the answers. So 4 times negative 5 is negative 20, and negative 20 plus 20 is 0. Well, what that would look like over here, it's the same set of directions. Okay, so I take the first row. Well, first row doesn't change, so we'll put that down here. Okay, so 4 times 1 is 4 plus negative 4 is 0. 4 times negative 5 is negative 20, and negative 20 plus negative 2 is negative 22. 4 times negative 5 is negative 20, and negative 20 plus 20 is 0. Now, Gauss even went a little bit further. He took off these back and front and back brackets. He's just doing this. Let's go back to this side. Well, now that I've got that, a 1 and a 0, I think what I'd like to do is make that, the negative 22, turn into a 1. That's pretty easy. All I have to do is go negative 1/22 times row 2 is my new row 2. Okay, row 1 doesn't change. So that's 1x minus 5y equals negative 5. Negative 1/22 times 0 is still 0. Negative 1/22 times negative 22 is positive 1y. So that's plus 1y equals, and negative 1 over 22 times 0 is 0. Okay, the last step here is to turn that negative 5 into a 0. What I'm going to do is I'm going to multiply the bottom row by 5 and add it to the top row, because I'll have a 5 plus a negative 5. So my rule here is going to be, oh, I didn't do it over here. Sorry about that. Same rule, negative 1 over 22 times row 2 becomes the new row 2. Top row doesn't change. And then we've got 0, 1, and 0. All right, let's go back. Now we can. So this time my rule is going to be 5 times row 2 plus row 1 is my new row 1. Okay? Now this time row 1 is changing, so I'm not just going to bring it down. But I've got 5 times 0 is 0 plus 1 is 1. So I've got 1x. Then I've got 5 times 1 is 5 plus negative 5 is 0 plus 0y equals 5 times 0 is 0 plus negative 5 is negative 5. The second row did not change. So why is that a y? Sorry. So that's 0x plus 1y equals 0. Over here on this side, it's 5 times row 2 plus row 1 becomes the new row 1. And what we get there is a 1, 0, negative 5, 0, 1, 0. All right, well, what are you starting to notice? Do you see the identity matrix there? So what Gauss is finding out is, if I can make this side the identity matrix, then right there are my answers. There's the x value and the y value. But look at it over here. If we simplify this, this first row just becomes x equals negative 5, and the second row just becomes y equals 0. All right? Or in matrix form, if you like, that would be 1, 0, 0, 1 times xy equals negative 5, 0. That identity matrix times the xy gives you your answer of xy equals negative 5, 0. So that's how Gauss figured out how to